Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Honpa Hongwanji State Ministers Association of Hawaii virtual Sunday service. My name is Bert Sumikawa, and I'm a minister at the Windward Buddhist Temple in Kailua. Please join me in the singing of the Vandana and Ti-Sarana found on page 7 of your Red Service book. Namo Amida, Naman. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sambuddhassa. Homage to him, the exalted one, the enlightened one, the supremely awakened one. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. Namo Amida, Namo Amida, Namo Amida, Namanda. Please join me in chanting the Sutra Gassho to Amida, found on page 123 of your Red Service book. Namandavs, Namandavs, Namandavs. Namo Amida Butsu. I recite Amida's name with deep joy and gratitude. I Gassho to Amida, trees and grasses and flowers all grow in great compassion. This light shines throughout the world. I Gassho to Amida, flowers bloom and flowers fall. From the seed sprout new flowers. This is the truth unchanging. I Gassho to Amida. Springtime brings the happy birds. Their songs all praise Amida. I join them in Nembutsu. I Gassho to Amida. When I call Amida's name, it's Amida calling me. Buddha's voice, my voice are one. I Gassho to Amida. When I'm lonely, I recite Namo Amida Butsu. Then I feel great compassion. I Gassho to Amida. Nembutsu in work and play, every day with Amida, every moment filled with light. I Gassho to Amida. Remember the golden chain, kindness to all living things. I will follow this teaching. I Gassho to Amida. In the clear bright morning sun, in the fading light of day, in the darkness of the night, I Gassho to Amida. Namo Amida Butsu. I live in great compassion. This great power guides my life. I Gassho to Amida. The virtue of Amida's vow is shared equally by all, together attaining awakened mind. We are born in the land of peace. Namanda, 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 Namanda. Let's put our hands together in reverence as I read a passage from the Shoshin-ye. But though the light of the sun is veiled by clouds and mists, beneath the clouds and mists there is brightness, not dark. When one realizes Shinjing, seeing and revering and attaining great joy, one immediately leaps crosswise, closing off the 5 evil courses. Namo Amida Butsu. Once on a trip to the mainland, I stayed overnight at a hotel near the San Francisco airport before continuing on. And in the morning, I took a stroll outside the hotel near the water's edge and observed the airplanes landing and taking off. It is the busy international airport, as you well know, and they have 2 parallel airstrips. And I was amazed to see planes landing every 2 or 3 minutes. And I actually once saw 2 planes landing simultaneously. It was well orchestrated, and I was amazed to see the coordination and interdependent behavior of the pilots, not to mention the coordination of the air traffic controllers as well. I could imagine the responsibilities felt by the pilots and flight attendants in their effort and aspiration to transport passengers safely to their respective destinations. Some of the passengers, I presume, were on their way to another destination to work or to seek better opportunities elsewhere. I sat and wondered for a while. Where were they going or coming from? Were they running away from an unpleasant situation? Were they coming to seek a better life? Were they students coming to the San Francisco area universities and schools to better their chances of employment? Or were they going or coming to meet their loved ones separated from long distances? I then sat back on a park bench and thought of how our immigrant ancestors first came to Hawaii and where some of them later moved to the mainland. It was to me the same type of effort that moved them to succeed here and elsewhere. It was their combined effort and aspiration that they came here on a small steamship in very uncomfortable situations on board, as I expect that they didn't have the option of coming here on a first-class ticket. When the immigrants first came to Hawaii back in 1868 to work on the sugar plantations, Hawaii was still a kingdom. And as I said, many later immigrated to the United States, mostly to California. Of those that came, some were former samurai, merchants, barbers, blacksmiths, cooks, carpenters, stonemasons, and others, and they were determined to make a fortune here and return to Japan. Thousands of Hawaiians had died from measles, typhus, influenza, and other infectious diseases that had been introduced here that were unknown to the islanders. And so King Kalakaua then had to look for a way to rebuild a population base. At the same time, the sugar industry was experiencing dramatic growth, with a significant amount of sugar being exported to the mainland. So as Kalakaua needed labor, he went to the Japanese government for permission to solicit immigrants. The promise of $4 a month salary and the possibility of saving over $100 in 3 years was highly tempting. Over 28,000 Japanese applied for the job thinking, let's go to Hawaii and seek our fortune. But can you imagine what Hawaii was like at the turn of the 20th century? Working in Hawaii was not easy. Living in miserable shacks, they arose at 4 a.m. to start work at 5, clearing land or harvesting the sugar cane. So off to work they went, Hohana, or as they say, Kachiking. Unused to this type of work and unable to speak the language, they had frequent conflicts with managers who refused to live up to their contracts, and lunars with their whips who forced even the sick to work the fields. The immigrants did not learn English but developed a hybrid language today known as Pidgin English, or more correctly, Hawaiian Creole. They developed a way to be able to communicate with each other. My grandfather was speaking the Hawaiian language rather than English. The workers had no choice but to endure their miserable conditions and long hours. And many fell victim to sunstroke, and many died from disease. Occasionally, plagues would break out and pass through Honolulu and the plantations, and many would die in the course of a few months. Seeing so many of their friends going to their grave, many workers became intensely aware of the transient nature of this world, and they thought about the future. Some began to recite the Nembutsu. Gradually, an increasing number of immigrants began to rely on Buddhism. In the Tanisho, chapter 7, it states that in the person of Nembutsu opens up the great path of unobstructed freedom. The reason is that the gods of heaven and earth bow before the practicer of true and trusting and those of the world of demons and rival ways cannot obstruct such a person. The consequences of karmic evil cannot bear fruit, nor does any form of good equal the Nembutsu. Thus, it is called the great path of unobstructed freedom. The Nembutsu does not guarantee a life of happiness. It does not offer a permanent escape from pain as well, nor does it eliminate all sorrow. However, the Buddha holds and supports us with compassion. The Nembutsu practitioner will face hardships and difficulties, but they can be transcended. To practice the Nembutsu is to walk the path of unobstructed freedom. My paternal grandmother, who was a devoted Nembutsu follower, would recite the creed every night at the Butsudan and had us join her as well each night. Each morning, without fail, she would make a rice offering. Whenever someone came to visit and brought something to eat, she would first take a few pieces out to make an offering to the Buddha. She lost her husband while toiling in Kahuku. She followed the path of unobstructed freedom, and with her 4-year-old son in tow, moved to Wahiawa and then to Honolulu seeking employment and to somehow eke out a living. It was there that she met her second husband, my step-grandfather, and together they moved to Pearl City Peninsula, where he first worked as a rice farmer on rented land, and then started to grow papaya and other vegetables in addition to making charcoal from kiawe trees in Kunia. They had 3 children together, and with my father they later built a combination grocery store with a soda fountain, which became very popular during World War II, as we were only 2 blocks away from the Navy docks. They all led a life of unobstructed freedom with the Nembutsu, always taking refuge in the 6-character name that keeps one smiling in gratitude. Shinran Shonin wrote in the notes on one's calling and many calling that Shakyamuni states in the Sutra, "Know that the person who utters the Nembutsu is a white lotus among people. Like today, they turned crises into opportunities, and so did others." Here I'd like to show you 2 Chinese characters that you may be familiar with. These 2 Chinese characters represent the word for crisis, and it's broken down into 2 words. The first, this means danger, he, and the second means opportunity. So in other words then, during this dreaded crisis, when there's chaos in society, it creates an opportunity for all of us to engage in realizing the Buddhist principle of pratitya samutpada, of dependent origination. Nagarjuna, one of the 7 masters selected by Shinran, stated that life is interdependent, that all mental and physical states arises from and are dependent on conditions, that we are a product of many influences that create who we are and how we feel. How can the Dharma help us during this emergency? Although our interconnected life has caused this virus to spread quickly, the same interconnectedness or interdependence can help all of us. There is this teaching of the so-called Indra's net that the Buddha described. It is the mythical net that hangs high above the mythical Mount Sumeru, the highest point in Buddhist cosmology. And attached to each net is a shining precious jewel that exhibits its light of many colors onto one another. Each shining jewel represents each of us. In other words, all are precious in the eyes of the Buddha. And we are all interconnected, as in the so-called golden chain of love recited by children. And that we are in a link in a golden chain of love that stretches around the world. Although this pandemic is serious and has been affecting our lives in many ways unknown to us before, and has exposed us to the shallow nature of much of our behavior as well. We must remain mindful of our behavior at all times, caring for each other. We have seen many acts of kindness and compassion throughout the weeks here and abroad. We have also seen acts of unkindness and selfishness as well that have brought out the dark side of our human nature. However, we will together get through all of this in due time and be brighter and stronger than before. The world is a cleaner place today with a more than 25% reduction in pollution. We can see skies of blue and purple mountains, majesties, as in the song. It is making us aware of the simple things in life: a smile, shaking hands, a friendly pat on the shoulders, a hug. We should always be aware that suffering and unhappiness that we are experiencing during this time of pandemic have been with us since the dawn of humanity. We have suffered unknown origins of infectious and debilitating diseases throughout our history, but have overcome these obstacles through the understanding of interconnectedness, overcoming obstacles, and truly live in unobstructed freedom within the guided light of infinite wisdom and compassion. Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Butsu. And now, please join me in the singing of the Nembutsu. Namo Amida, Namo Amida, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo. Thank you all for being a part of this remote Dharma service. I wish you well and good health always. See you again next Sunday at 10 for the Gotang A service by Reverend Saul Kalu. Have a nice rest of the day and always. And remember to do this. Bye.